Hello again, I'm Ryan Panzer, the author of Grace and Gigabytes, and in this video we're going to be talking about the changing nature of connection. So it used to be that the way we connected with each other was largely in person, and particularly in the church, connection was a distinctively analog thing. You know, you'd go to church, you'd talk to someone face to face. That was really the only way you connected with your fellow churchgoers. Nowadays, there's this level of virtual integration, virtual augmentation to all of our connections. I sometimes think about the best example of this as the way my confirmation students use Snapchat. Now, we try not to get them to use Snapchat too much once confirmation actually starts, but before the night's events, before the night's lessons, they're out there in the lobby, they're talking to one another, they're playing games, they're having fun, and they're recording a lot of these interactions and sending them to friends that are distant, that aren't actually part of the experience. And Snapchat is just one small way that our connections are being redefined as a hybrid of online and offline experiences. So many of the things that happen in person are streamed and shared online. So many of the things we experience online, we later reconnect with those in person and talk about what we experienced online. So the concept of redefining connection in the church emanates from this world of technology that always augments a layer of the digital into our lived real-world experience. As a result of that, you can't really say that the virtual is the opposite of real, because virtual is embedded into everything we do. All we can really say is that virtual is now the opposite of physical, the opposite of face-to-face. Now, in section 2 of the book, we talk about connections, and I present 4 different ideas here. The idea of finding new ways to connect, the idea of redefining offline connection, of integrating the online with the offline, and of connecting with the whole person. Interestingly enough, I'll let you in on a little trade secret here. I finished this section of the book before March of 2020. So I had no idea at the time that the pandemic was going to move many of our church experiences into an online format and later to a hybrid format. So a lot of the book is written to convince digital skeptics to perhaps give these things, which later became an inevitability, some kind of a try. But I want to think about hybrid connection not just as something that is going to become the future of the church, but as something that has a particular pattern or sequence to it. Hybrid connections, as it turns out, rarely originate online. You know, it's hard to create new relationships with those we've never met or worked with in person. It's especially difficult in Christian leadership. Hybrid connections typically initiate in some kind of a face-to-face encounter. And this is why the hybrid church, the church that connects through a blend of digital and analog, will always have a strong face-to-face component. Most of our interactions are going to start face-to-face. People often ask, well, how do we start making relationships in cyberspace? And the answer I give them is, you actually have to start making relationships in the neighborhood. That's the future of the church, a blend of the neighborhood-based and the digital. So in the book, I share some ideas of how churches are finding new and innovative ways to get out into their neighborhood and make connections that are later strengthened through digital engagement. I share the story of different churches doing Ashes on the Diag at the University of Michigan. I share a story of a food cart ministry in Madison, Wisconsin. And I even share a story about a campus pastor in Nebraska who held a very unique type of vigil on his campus quad. All of these stories share in common a commitment to being present in a shared third space, a spot where the community gathers and is regularly present. Starbucks, by the way, is a third space. We didn't have access to our third spaces during many of the first 15 months of the pandemic. But as we start to reopen, third space ministry will be essential to church leaders seeking to create hybrid connections, being consistently present and consistently available where our communities are gathered. It's only when we do that work that we can really build relationships in cyberspace, because we have to have some level of trust before digital communications can really take off. Now, one other aspect I want to mention about this world of hybrid connection is the importance of seeing the whole person. When we connect in cyberspace, it's really easy to flatten our identities into an avatar or a screen name or a Twitter handle. It's quite difficult to see the complexities and the depth and the nuance of the individual. As church leaders, we have to work to, in many ways, slow down the reactions to what we see online, so we can pause and think about someone's context and where they might be coming from, and we can take that into consideration within our response. The book has some quotes and perspectives from a brilliant researcher named Shamika Goddard on the importance of seeing the whole person in digital spaces, and how difficult it is, and why it's so important to Christian leadership. So section 2 of the book, to recap, takes us through this journey of hybrid connections. It explains how technology led us into the space where the online and the offline are always blended together. And it explores how we can use neighborhood-based face-to-face connections to build relationships in cyberspace. We didn't actually do this work during the pandemic. Our relationships were entirely online. So I'm looking forward to seeing us emerge from this time of physical distancing, so that the connections and the encounters we have with one another in real time can later be extended and continued on the web. In the next section of the book, we're going to talk about collaboration and what collaboration might mean for the future of the church.